Shirlian was still staring at the young man in red. He wanted to say something, but under the gaze of numerous pairs of eyes and the unreadable expression on Hua Cheng's face that didn't seem to show any signs of recognizing him, Shirlian debated whether he should act so familiar with him. If it was intentional, then it wasn't his place to say too much either. So he simply said, "Thank you." "Why thank him?" Lang Chancho demanded. "This place is owned by him. He probably had malintentions since the beginning." Shirlian replied under his breath, "Your Highness, let's stop talking and call it a day." If they were to continue, he really didn't know what would come out of Lang Chancho's mouth. Especially with the mission at hand, Shirlian couldn't afford to stay long. He looked at Hua Cheng a couple more times, and then pushed Lang Chancho toward the exit. Just as he did so, Hua Cheng's voice called from behind him, "Hold it." Shirlian halted in his step and turned around. The chatter amongst the crowd started again. "That's right, my lord, we can't just let them leave like this. That guy is suspicious. He looks to be quite powerful and is probably hiding something. If you ask me, we should keep him here and interrogate him." Exactly. Who knows if he's a spy sent from whichever organization to cause trouble in our world? That last sentence almost stopped Shirlian's heart. They really did come from the heavens, but the intent wasn't to cause trouble, only quiet probing. Shirlian wasn't sure if Hua Cheng had seen the spiritual light that Lang Chancho had released before, and he wasn't 100% certain that Hua Cheng would let them go if he did. Shirlian was growing increasingly anxious, but the tone Hua Cheng spoke in was laid back. "Shouldn't you leave the prize?" Shirlian was lost. Prize? Lang Chancho put himself in front of Shirlian and said cautiously, "Are you going back on your word now?" But Shirlian thought, Sun Lang would never go back on his promises. Could he have meant something else? With that, he stepped out from behind Lang Chancho and asked, "But didn't I already win the bet?" Hua Cheng said, "It's true that Gerger had won against me just now, but don't forget you'd lost a round before." Shirlian was surprised, "But you said not to worry, because it didn't count?" Even though it took some really thick skin to say something as embarrassing as, "It doesn't count when I lose, and it only counts when I win," Shirlian still said it. Hua Cheng replied, "Of course, the ones that were bet against me didn't count. What I'm referring to is the first round that you gambled at the long table." It was then that Shirlian finally remembered. Hua Cheng was talking about that time when he wanted to test out the lowest he could roll and had ended up throwing out a double 6 instead. Lang Chancho whispered, "I told you he didn't have good intentions and wouldn't let us leave that easily. I won't get sealed again this time." Seeing that he was readying himself for another fight and was eager to jump up at the chance, Shirlian quickly pulled him back. "Don't worry, we don't need to use our fists." On the other end, Hua Cheng tilted his head. "How about it? Gerger, do you admit your loss?" If one was willing to gamble, then one should also admit to their loss honestly. There were no other options. So Shirlian nodded. "I admit." Hua Cheng extended his left hand with an open palm. "Then, give me the prize like you promised." The prize that he had promised? After some hesitation, Shirley reached into his left sleeve with his right hand, felt around, and fished out a half-eaten bun. Unable to look Hua Cheng in the eye, he toughened up his skin and presented it. "You mean this, right?" Truth be told, when he took out this bun, Shirley felt the thick skin that he'd grown through his 800 years crumble a little, unable to hold up. The ghosts in the hall had been already speechless long before, and only watched in silence. Never mind that it was the Lord's first time betting against someone. When the bet came to be a half-eaten bun, they thought it was a joke. But to think, in all seriousness, the Lord had actually pursued the person to ask for this bun, speechless. There was really nothing to say. There were some ghosts who even had a more absurd thought. Either there was some sort of enormous secret hidden within this bun, or this person was actually the Lord's older brother. Yet Hua Cheng grinned as he received the bun, gave it a look, and waved it around in his hand. "I've claimed this prize." To see that he actually took it, Shirley didn't know what to say. It was only after a good minute that he responded. "It's cold, and maybe a little hard." Hua Cheng replied, "That's okay, I don't mind." Since he answered like this, Shirley had nothing more to say to continue the conversation. He already said all that he could, so he turned around and headed toward the exit. The nether crowd of the gambler's den all parted for him as he left. When he first went forward, they parted for him, thinking that he was a brave warrior. Now they parted for him with fear and suspicion. After walking a few steps, he could hear the ghosts behind him ask, my Lord, where are you going now?" Hua Cheng lazily replied, "I'm feeling good today. I'm heading to the Paradise Manor." Hearing his response, the hall erupted in cheers, as if it was New Year's. Shirley couldn't help but take another glance back and saw that Hua Cheng had also turned around. With that half-eaten bun still in his hand, he gave it a light toss and casually took a bite out of it, looking in Shirley's direction. Shirley paused in his tracks when he saw that scene play out. Suddenly, for some reason, he felt that he shouldn't stay there any longer. He picked up his pace, grabbed Lang Chan Cho, and ran out. The two left the gambler's den and ran like madmen for a long time, almost knocking over various food stalls along the way. Just when they had finally arrived at a small, quiet alley, Shi Qing Xuan also popped up and reunited with them. Shi Qing Xuan fanned himself with such vigor that his hair flew wildly in the wind. That was so close. My God, that scared me to the point that my face was almost as white as a ghost's. Perhaps it was because they ran too hard that Shirley's heart was also beating madly. Shi Qing Xuan spoke up. "Chan Cho, you're also a martial god. How could you be so rash? We're in the middle of the ghost realm territory. If you were to be caught and exposed, and news of undercover heavenly officials in the ghost city had gotten out, how would we explain this to the heavenly emperor? It would destroy peace in the 3 realms." Lang Chan Cho bowed his head and admitted his mistake. "I'm sorry, I rushed in too carelessly." Then he raised his head. But those gamblers were crazy. If that man had flipped open the cup, whether he had lost or won, the outcome would still have been bad. Either his daughter would suffer, or he would suffer the consequences. It was in my moment of anger that I crushed the cup. Shi Qingxuan replied, "Even so, you shouldn't have jumped in by yourself." Lang Chancho was taken aback. "Then, Lord Windmaster, what should I have done? If I didn't go in, there wouldn't be anyone who would have." His plea was so genuine that Shi Qingxuan didn't know how to respond, and tapped his fan lightly against his temple. "Well," Shirlian smiled softly, "let's leave it." Lang Chancho looked at him. Shirlian continued, "I think even if His Highness Tai Hua was to get caught and interrogated, he still wouldn't reveal his identity. But to prevent others from picking up any clues from your words, it would be best for your Highness to stay cautious and avoid capture going forward." Lang Chancho nodded. "Okay, I understand." Shi Qingxuan said, "All right, let's not talk about this anymore." "All right, Your Highness." Hearing Your Highness, both Shirlian and Lang Chancho turned around at the same time, and Shi Qingxuan clarified, "Oh, I meant the elder." Shirlian thought woefully, "Elder, it's true that I'm a little older, but not by that much. Why is it that when it comes to me, it always sounds like they're referring to a grandpa?" Shi Qingxuan continued, "Your Royal Highnesses, have you two met each other at the Great Martial Hall? If not, let me introduce you. This is the Crown Prince of Yong'an, Lang Chancho, Martial God of the East. And this is the Crown Prince of Xianle, Shirlian, a heavenly official that's highly regarded by the Heavenly Emperor." Even though Shi Qingxuan stopped himself and didn't say the words, Shirlian knew exactly what he meant to say. What else could it be other than the heavenly official that picks up scraps? Since the words were abruptly swapped in mid-sentence, there was no time to adjust the grammar nor the pronunciation. Lang Chancho looked at Shirlian and asked in astonishment, "So you're the prince that ascended thrice?" It seemed that Lang Chancho had really slept through the entire meeting at the Great Martial Hall the last time and didn't even remember who he was. If it was anyone else and they said the same thing to Shirlian, then it would no doubt be sarcastic. But because the question came from Lang Chancho, Shirlian wholeheartedly believed that this child truly thought ascending thrice was a rare occurrence. Shirlian's eyes twinkled. "Yes, that would be me." Lang Chancho responded, "That incident just now, thank you for helping me, or else." He suddenly remembered something and hurriedly tightened up his waistband, fear still lingering in his expression. He clearly didn't think too much about the past history between the kingdom of Xianle and the kingdom of Yong'an and turned to Shirlian. "Your Highness, I thought that Crimson Rain Sword Flower knows you. How come he acted as if he didn't back there?" Lang Chancho finished tying up his waistband. That was the real Crimson Rain Sword Flower, right? Was that his true form? Shirlian didn't even have the time to open his mouth, and Shi Qingxuan already piped up. "How can it be the true form? Hua Cheng has thousands of disguises. Who knows what his true form looks like? Last time, when I went to the Banyue Pass, he looked similar to the appearance today, but it's probably a disguise too. It's fake, all fake." Yet Shirlian clearly recalled that Hua Cheng had told him, The next time we meet, I'll greet you in my true form. That night at Puchi Shrine. He thought to himself, it's real. But of course, he didn't say it out loud. Everyone was so sure that Hua Cheng must be wearing a fake skin, and him being the only one who knew that it was Crimson Rain, Sword Flower's true form, was like learning of an extraordinary little secret. He then continued that train of thought. Seeing Sun Lung's appearance, he really doesn't look that much different from before, only slightly older and taller. That means, technically, he was pretty much in his true form the first time I met him. Strangely, Shirlian felt a little happy. Shi Xuan added from the side, people say that Hua Cheng is a strange character, and that really seems to be the case. It's obvious that he was going easy on you, and yet he pretended not to know you. Who knows what he's up to? Could it be that he wanted to catch us off guard? Shirlian choked. It seemed that anyone could tell that Hua Cheng had gone easy on him back in the gambler's den. He went easy on him, was what people were saying, but truthfully, Hua Cheng literally just let him win one-sidedly. Lang Chancho was the only one who couldn't tell and frowned. Went easy on him? Why? The other two patted him on the shoulder and decided it was best not to explain it to him. They left Lang Chancho standing by himself, wondering why Hua Cheng would go easy on Shirlian, and whether or not the two knew each other. Shirlian and Shi Xuan turned and started walking. It seems that we've been exposed. What should we do now? Shirlian asked. Change our disguises and try again? Personally, I don't think that doing that will change anything. With His Highness Tai Hua's fight back there, Ghost City will probably strengthen their security. Shi Xuan replied, to be honest, I had considered the possibility of us getting exposed, but I never thought it would happen this soon. Shirlian sighed, I know. But what's done is done, Shi Xuan said. Since our cover is blown, you might as well just walk in confidently and do this openly. Shirlian could vaguely guess what he meant by openly. As expected, Shi Xuan explained, if we want to smooth out the lie, then the only way is to have you go find Hua Cheng and tell him that you came here especially to see him. He knows that you're a heavenly official, right? If so, then it's pretty believable to say that you've brought a couple of friends from heaven with you. Before Shirlian could answer, Lang Chancho, who had heard the suggestion, immediately cried out, no. Shi Xuan looked at him. Why not? Lang Chancho replied in a serious tone, Prince Shanle, do you really know Crimson Rain, Sword Flower? I heard your conversation earlier, and it seems you two are friends. Shirlian nodded. Then of course that plan is not feasible, Lang Chancho said. Even though a ghost king is no saint, the fact that he went easy on you must mean that he also sees you as a friend. If it's so, then one must not lie to a friend. Shi Xuan could feel an oncoming headache. My God, Chancho, you dimwit. Shirlian laughed and nodded. What His Highness Tai Hua said is right. Lang Chancho beamed. You agree with me too, right? How is that right? Shi Xuan complained. We are 3 heavenly officials. If we were to report back empty-handed, people would say that our success rate is even lower than the palace of Ling Wen, and that would be an utter embarrassment. Shirlian grinned, and just when he was about to speak, the sound of cries and howls that came from behind made them turn around. Just outside the alley, a group of demons and ghosts ran past, shouting, "Where's that brat with the bandaged face? Where the hell is he?" Seeing the other two guards alarmed, Shirley reassured, "Don't worry, they're not after us." Just as the words left his lips, their ears were pierced by a shrill, deafening cry.